The 2025 NFL Draft has come to a close, and Ben Johnson's handprints were written all over this year's draft for the Chicago Bears. We'll give you our Cisco and Ebert review in just a moment. In baseball, the Phillies knocked out the Cubs in the friendly confines, while the White Sox stole two losses from the jaws of victory in the city by the Bay. We'll explain. In basketball, LeBron James grew on one game away from being eliminated in the first round of the NBA playoffs, while Detroit and the Knicks came down to a classic finish. And we'll have old school TV Monday and a whole lot more as this edition of the Monday Extravaganza on Sports Zone Chicago starts right now. Welcome to this edition of the Monday Extravaganza, the last one for the month of April. You're locked and loaded, and we're live in living color right here on Sports Soul Chicago, along with Miss LaKeena McGee, which is she. I am Sidney Brown. You know that it's me. You can follow yours surely on the Twitter, X, and the IG at CK80. Once again, it's CK80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
You follow McGee McGee on the Twitter, executes again, IG.
Be sure to download that Sports Zone Chicago app wherever you get your apps. Please follow Sports Zone Chicago on all social media platforms on Facebook, X, Instagram, and YouTube. Please subscribe to our podcast. We are located at War Media Podcast. That's WARR Media, PODCASTS. We are on all podcast platforms, including the iHeartRadio app. And while you're at it, please give War Media a follow at WARR Media on all social media platforms. And thank you very much in advance for your support.
Like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends.
We are unapologetically fun, and we have very definite opinions. If you have any definite opinion, do not 2-hour extravaganza we call a Sports Talk Radio Show. You can definitely hit us up at Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or at Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in those questions or comments in the comment section. LaKeena will get the up on the screen for you. But if you decide to troll and or do something silly, dumb, or stupid, I've given LaKeena full powers to give you fools to be able to be a boot.
Toodles.
But before we begin, shout out to the replay game that's checking us out now on the replay at Sports Zone Chicago's YouTube and Facebook pages. And of course, much love to the live game. That's LIVE, Live Entertainment, that's checking us out right now. Also on our Sports Zone Chicago YouTube and Facebook pages. Don't you ever forget our motto where we talk music, entertainment, sports, minus politics, and more. We will always provide.
You with some of the best City sports. Of course, we got addition. Of course, it's Monday, so we got old school TV Monday and sports media news. Probably one of the worst kept secrets ever at the score has now been official. We'll talk about that. It involves a couple of some of our favorites. With that, so we'll talk about that later on. Other sports media news over the weekend as well. Some NHL teams are going to be looking for new head coaches as some of the playoff series are getting a little interesting, especially also in the NBA as well, and so much more. But first, and of course, the NFL. Well, of course, we'll talk baseball as well as the both the Cubs and the White Sox have tough weekend series. We'll talk about that. But of course, the NFL draft concluded on Saturday, and of course, the Bears will start with them first. And in addition to, of course, Colston Loveland, the tight end from Michigan, they added guys like Luther Burden III, who was all SEC over at Missouri. I know our buddy Josh Fryman from WGN and Mike Berman for NBC Chicago, 55 Chicago. We're happy about that because he's a Mizzou guy. Ozzie Trapilo, who is the offensive tackle from Boston College. Shamar Turner from Texas A&M, the defensive tackle. Those are the three second rounders. Ruben Hippolyte, the second from Maryland, the small linebacker, but he packs a big punch. Zaf Frazier from UTSA, the Roadrunners. Beat the cornerback. He was selected in the 5th round.
I knew you were going to do that.
Yeah, well, of course, duh. You got to do it. The Roadrunners. Beep. Luke Newman from Michigan State, of course, the offensive guard. And they finally, for the last pick, announced a running back depth with Kyle Monagal, who from Rutgers, who was actually all Big Ten, because of course the Ohio State guys, Caleb Johnson and Travion Henderson weren't there, so they wait till the seventh round to address that. So, what did you think? I know some of the grades that a lot of the draft experts were giving them, like B pluses, Bs. What do you think?
I thought the Bears did very well. You could tell that Ben Johnson's handprints were all over this draft. Of course, with the first round pick we talked about on last Friday on the show with the tight end. Me personally, I would have traded out of the 10th pick and selected Loveland with the later in that first round, but the teams didn't see that the Bears number 10 pick was worth moving up for. And so the Bears did get their guy number 10. I think he will do well in this Ben Johnson offense with the two tight end sets with him and Cole Kmet. And so I think it will benefit the Bears and Caleb Williams very well, assuming that the offensive line stays healthy and you get a comparable running game. With the 3 second round picks, shout out to Brian Poles once again for an additional second round pick. And I really like the Luther Burden, the third pick from Mizzou, because what did we talk about all off season, LaKeena? What did we talk about leading up to the draft? The Bears need a stretch wide receiver that's going to stretch the field, run after the catch, and that's what Luther Burden does. And the Bears do not have that right now. Roma Duze had a nice rookie year. We know what you're going to get out of DJ Moore, but you don't have, in my opinion, a wide receiver that can stretch the field. Tyler Scott is on his last legs. I know they picked up a couple other scrap heats during free agency, but you need a guy that's going to scare defenses, which opens up for the other guys on offense. And I think that's what Luther does will try to do for this Bears offense. Now, on the flip side for the offensive line, you mentioned about Ozzie Trapillo out of Boston College and Luke Newman, the guard out of Michigan State. I'm not surprised at these picks. You pick in depth for the offensive line. Let's be real. Even though you have a good offensive line on paper, a couple of those veterans like Chris Dahlman and Joe Tooney are in their mid 30s, and they're susceptible to injuries because of the age. So you're really drafted for depth there, and I get it, which is a very smart move on the Bears' part. The only flip side, if I could really have a complaint about, maybe they didn't see this guy in the draft, but a backup safety, just in case Jaquan Brisker has another injury-riddled season again.
You listen to Second City Sports on Sports Chicago. LaKeena, McGee, Sidney Brown with you. We'll talk about Tigers and Bears, NFL draft recap. We'll talk about the rest of the league after the break. But it's going to be interesting to see, like you said. I mean, the Bears, yes, they fulfilled, they added depth. They fulfilled some needs. They added depth to that wide receiving core. I remember Luther Burden III at Mizzou. He was one of the top wide receivers in the SEC this past season. And, he has, great speed. So I think that's a nice little compliment there to your Roma Dunzes. And so I think, and of course, DJ Moore as well. So that adds a little depth there with that receiving core. Trapillo, a solid old tackle from Boston College. Turner was one of the top defensive tackles in the SEC last year as well. Hippolyte the second, I should say. He's only like 6 feet, but the guy has a lot of muscle too. He can bench press like 300. So that don't let his size fool you. So I guess that's a nice little compliment there in that linebacking core. Frazier, like I said, a corner, a really great corner from UT San Antonio. Newman, probably one of the few bright spots on the Michigan State squad last year. Guy who, is a speedy guy. Like I said, he was the one who was all Big Ten in the running back department last year. And like I said, I think, look, this like you said, this has been Johnson written all over it. So can they produce? That's going to be the number one question. And I think, look, I always don't like giving out grades because it's sort of one of those things where, you got little things here and there. It would have been nice if they had drafted another edge rusher, but I guess if Return Turk could play on the edge as well. So I guess that's kind of why they decided to go that route. But, I think, look, I'm at that point where I want to see these guys on the field and produce. Like, it's going to, the draft looks good, but again, I need to see these guys in Coach Johnson's system to see if these guys, this was a good draft for the Bears.
I want to switch over to the defensive side of football, and your you brought up Shamar Turner. No, not Shamar Moore, ladies in LaKeena, but Shamar Turner. You mentioned getting speed with that defensive tackle, and we talked about this too numerous times on the show leading up to the draft that you needed that edge guy to go next to Montez Sweat. And let's not kid ourselves, LaKeena. Before last season, the Bears did not have a problem stopping the run. Last year they had problems not just pressuring and getting knocking down the quarterback. They had problems stopping the run too. I think the Shamar Turner pick will help the Bears, be speedy. Like you said, he can play in defensive tackle wherever you line him up. As long as he has speed and knows how to get around these linemen, I think the Bears will be okay. I think this pick will help them do that. It seems like with this Bears defense, you need speed and you need athleticism to get to the quarterback. Now you hope that Montez Sweat will stay healthy, and if he does, he can draw the result in limited action before his injury to his shin last year. He was drawing so much double teams it tried to open up space for the other guys. He just couldn't get home to the quarterback on a consistent basis, and which in essence it didn't help them stopping the run either, because most of the teams that they played last year ran all over them as well. So with that Shamar Turner pick, I think this should help them curb that problem of stopping the run. Hopefully they can turn that into, again, consistent pressure on the quarterback.
Yeah, the Drew and Newman picks, I think it was more for depth, so I'm not, too, worried about that. So it's going to be interesting to see like how, especially on the defensive side, how puts, how uses Turner and the rest of that young defensive guys. So I think it's going to be interesting to see like how he kind of facilitates that. And as far as the offense is concerned, I mean. Excuse me. I think we'll see how Loveland does. I think he'd be a good compliment to Kmet, but I think you're feeling a little bit a certain type of way. So especially with Mercedes Lewis still gonna be playing for the Bears, I'm sure you're not gonna see him that much. Yeah, we're not gonna see him that much. But yeah, well, you're just fill up a roster spot. But I digress. But it'll be interesting to see how this does. But yeah, so you got a rookie training camp, mini camp coming up, and we'll see. Of course, training camp after that. So this is all kind of like, look, they've had a nice offseason, but look, they've had nice offseason in the recent years. It still hasn't been the case. So let's see how these guys do once we get the pads on them and they start practicing.
And one more player that you brought up earlier, I want to talk about real quick, is Kyle Manaji out of Rutgers. Now, will he be the quote unquote second running back on this team? I think by common sense, football logic depth chart, the answer is yes, but you still have DeAndre Swift, and you still have Travis Homer. Why is he on this roster outside of special teams? I don't know. But maybe you think – I thought they should have went after Cam Scatterboot out of Arizona State. We'll tell you where he went following this timeout. But for the Bears, the way that Ben Johnson wants to use the running game in his offense, hopefully that he makes – most 7th-round picks don't make the team. But if he does make the team, how many carries is he going to receive? Will he split it with DeAndre Swift or perhaps somebody else, barring any major injury? So it looks that pick, the 7th-round pick, looks nice on the board, but I want to see how well they use him during the preseason, and will he be that second banana to DeAndre Swift?
Yeah, I was seeing like some of the people that we know who cover the Bears. They were kind of like lobbying for them to get to draft Scatterboot, but that would have been funny though if that would have happened. But unfortunately, they just missed him, and like I said, we'll tell you where he went in just a second after the break. But also to some other notable names. Shedeur Sanders finally got drafted to an interesting place. We'll tell you where in just a little bit here, and also some other notable names. And also how other teams did in the draft as well, overall grades and such. So a lot of draft recap to do still. LaKeena McGee, Sidney Brown, Second City Sports, Sports of Chicago. More draft talk and a little baseball too coming up right after this.
This year, my mom got me the perfect bag for back to school.
These colorful binders help me stay organized.
These headphones are just what I need for studying.
These new sneakers are just what I need for the new year.
This jacket is a real must-have.
My parents got me the skateboard I wanted. It's pretty cool.
These scissors really come in handy in art class.
These colored pencils, too.
These new socks, they can be a real lifesaver.
I finally got my own phone to stay in touch with my mom.
Trisha's having a sleepover tonight. Can I go?
I wonder about Lucy's friends. What should I say? I know you're only 10, but one of these days a friend will offer you a drink. And alcohol at your age can lead to so many things. None of them good.
So can I go to the sleepover?
Lucy, I want you to promise me
I
something.
finished my homework.
Bigger promise. If there's any drinking, I want you to say, "No thanks, not my thing."
Mom.
I promise you. Your real friends won't care. Deal?
Sure.
Really?
I promise, Mom.
They really do hear you.
Did you pack your toothbrush?
For tips on how to start the talk, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov, a public service message from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.
Hey, this is Dr. J, and I listen to Sean and Maya in the morning.
Welcome back to Second City Sports. So this Monday extravaganza edition, the last one for the month of April. You're locked and loaded, and we're live in the living color right here on Sports Zone Chicago. I'm Sid. That's LaKeena. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter, X, and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, it's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. SIDKID80.
You find my Keena McGee on the Twitter, X and Hughes again, IG.
If you have any questions or comments for us regarding the Bears, the NFL draft, and Major League Baseball for this segment, you can definitely hit us up at Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or at Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in those questions or comments in the comment section. LaKeena will get the up on the screen for you.
Some of the notable, even for me to say names that were drafted over the weekend. After Thursday, of course, I guess the big name here, of course, was Shedeur Sanders, former Colorado quarterback, and he ended up going to Cleveland, and this is actually via a trade. So of course, everybody, there was all this talk. He ended up going 144 to in the 5th round. This actually, oddly enough, there's actually 2 rounds before, 50 picks before that. Dylan Gabriel, before QB from Oregon, also got drafted. So the weirdness how all that works. But so so we'll start with Sanders. What do you think? About, we had a little discussion in our group chat with us and our girl Christine Matt from KXRB. Interesting QB room, to say the least, in Cleveland.
Yeah, I know that Deshaun Watson won't play this year. Probably won't ever play ever again, because I think after next season that guaranteed contract is off the books. They'll probably have to work out something with them if they could get off of it sooner after this year. But after him, you have Joe Flacco, then Dylan Gabriel, and of course now Shedeur. I want to start out with the Dylan Gabriel pick. From what I've heard and read, LaKeena, I don't know about you, but Cleveland Browns owner Jimmy Haslam wanted Andrew Berry, the GM, to make a splash for the quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Dylan Gabriel was good at Oklahoma, but do you really think he'll be ready just in case Joe Flacco gets hurt this year? Me personally, I don't think so. And then, of course, they selected Shador Sanders in the fifth round. I found it very interesting to see why Shador fell so fast. And I don't know, LaKeena, if you caught Colin Cowherd's podcast late last night, earlier today. He had John Middlecoff. He's a former NFL scout, and he said that from what he heard around the league that this was basically, you could read between the lines, that this had something to do with Deion Sanders pumping him up during the Super Bowl week, saying that
Mm-hmm.
basically pulling Eli Archie Manning. Well, he's not going to play for this team. If he's selected by that team, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. So many teams were afraid of Shador. And of course, I don't know if the stories were true or not, that he didn't do well in interviews and whatnot. We don't know if that's true or not. I'm sure we'll find out the truth at some point. But this many organizations were scared off by the Deion Sanders factor, and that's why he fell. Now, do I believe that Shador Sanders was a fifth round pick? No, I didn't think he was going to fall out of the first round. But we said on Friday when the third round commenced that he was going to get picked in the third round. There's just no way he was going to slide that far down. But at the same time, many NFL scouts have gotten quarterback evaluations incorrect before. Jalen Hurts fell into the second round. Now he's a Super Bowl champion. Russell Wilson, third round. Now he's a Super Bowl champion. He's going to be a future Hall of Famer. So just as much as the NFL scouts get it right on some players, now that's a lot that they get wrong. Let's not forget, of course, the ultimate example, Tom Brady being Mr. Irrelevant pick in the 2000 NFL draft. I mean, you know what kind of career he had.
But yeah, whatever happened to him, and he'll tell you that every chance he gets about that. But yeah, I mean, it's sort of one of those. It's one of those things where I know people will try to bring race into it, like, well, no one made a big deal when Eli. Look, we're not doing that. There are people boycotting. We're not doing that crap. So stop it, all you social media warriors, all you keyboard warriors, as I call you. It's sort of one of those things where if and I saw the clips, like the one thing I think that probably turned a lot of folks off was like, do you know who my dad is? Like, that will not endear you to anybody if you say something like that. So look, ask Marcus Jordan. We won't get into that, but
right.
Yeah. So I'm not like, no, we're not doing that. So I just think that look, if he ends up proving all those folks wrong, this will all be forgotten. So, but yeah, I mean, it's just like kind of silly, like how it's always kind of played out and such. And look, yeah, like I'm sure teams were probably scared about the fact that could they, because there was that whole thing with Dallas, when they were looking for a head coach and such. So it's sort of like it all kind of started there to kind of manifest it. So it's just like, you could be confident, but there is a difference between confident and cocky. And I've seen some people say, well, why should you have to turn down his expectations? Because again, you don't want to come across as being an egomaniac. Nobody likes, people like confident people, but they don't like egomaniacal people, egomaniacs. So that kind of thing, unfortunately, I think that might have come across to some folks. Look, the best thing he can do is prove everybody wrong is to, look, if he plays well, balls out, hey, great. If he ends up, being sticking it up, that narrative is going to go. So yeah, the only way you can go here is up. So I hope this will be a good lesson for him. And sometimes being humble is not a bad thing. Just saying.
Let's just have this. I played this scenario out in my head this morning as I was prepping for the show. I think it's safe to assume that Shador Sanders probably won't be there for his whole career. Talking about in the Cleveland Browns uniform. Let's just say that Deion Sanders, who I think he'll try to make his case to coach in the NFL in the next 2 or 3 years. Assume that Colorado has a couple more successful seasons. You don't think that he's going to at least try in some, excuse the expression, backdoor way, try to get Shador Sanders to join his team if he decides to try to coach in the NFL?
Well, of course. Well, duh. That's why a lot of people were turned off. That's why. People just answer your own question.
So we'll see what happens. Like I said, Shador Sanders, I think he'll prove people wrong, but it'll depend on how how he carries himself, but on and off the field, how he does in the film room, and definitely what he does in the practice field. So if he continues to work his tail off both on and off the field, like you said, LaKeena, be a little bit humble, not be bigger than the room. Yeah, I think he'll be fine. But like you said, LaKeena, he's a rookie. There's nothing wrong, like you said, being confident in yourself. But if you get too full of yourself, thinking that you're just gonna coast by, then that, in my opinion, I think that's the problem. Like I said, I love confident people. I know it does. Some people express it in different ways, but if it comes out that you're better than other people without you proving it, or you do it very little, I think then it becomes a problem.
You listen to Second City Sports on Sports of Chicago. LaKeena, McGee, Sidney Brown with you. Recapping a little bit more of the NFL draft before we move on to baseball here. I would say now, going to the rest of the league, I think some of the teams that had really good drafts, I think Arizona had a really nice draft. Of course, they of course, Walter Nolan, the D tackle from Ole Miss. They got Will Johnson, who we talked about with our buddy Herb Howard from the Bigs from Michigan. They took him at 47. We'll see if that knee holds up. Some other guys that they drafted, Jordan Birch from Oregon, Cody Simon from Ohio State, also Denzel Burke from Ohio State as well. So a lot of Ohio State guys ended up going in the draft. Baltimore, I think, had an even better draft. I feel like they got Malachi Starks from Georgia, Mike Reed from Marshall, their edge rusher, Emory Jones Jr., the tackle from LSU, Teddy Buchanan from California to add a little bit of depth there. Interesting note, though, they got a kicker, Tyler Luke from Arizona, who's one of the top kickers in all of the Big 12, I should say. I almost kept myself saying Pac-12, but with they asserted with Justin Tucker's future, I think that's probably why they decided to let's get a proven kicker there. There were a couple other teams I think they had a good draft. From what I can see here, Denver had a nice draft. They got Pat Bryant from Illinois, the wide receiver. So it's another.
That's a good target for Bo Nix.
Yeah,
that's a good target for Bo Nix.
Definitely a steal for the draft, I think. So they had a nice draft. I think Green Bay had a nice draft as well. Of course, got Matt Golden, from Texas, Savion Williams, the wide receiver there. You can always look. You can never have too many wide receivers, for Jordan Love. They got two edge rushers in Baron Sorrell from Texas and Colin Oliver from Oklahoma State. Houston, they got a lot of they got, of course, Orenture Ursary from Minnesota. I know Sid was a big fan of his. Jalen Noel and Jalen Smith from USC, also Woody Marks from USC as well. The Colts, Tyler Warren, who I know a lot of people wanted. He ended up going there. Also, JT Tremolo, who another guy that I know that our buddy Herb wanted. He ended up going to Richard from Ohio State. He ended up going to Indy. DJ Gittens, Jalen Travis, Riley Leonard from Notre Dame as well. So who else do you think had a really solid draft, Sid?
Going back to Baltimore for just a second. Speaking of Deion Sanders, two of his wide receivers got drafted. LaJohntay Murray and Jimmy Horn Jr. both go to Baltimore. Hopefully, both of those guys could be respectable targets for Lamar Jackson. I want to focus in on the New England Patriots. Of course, Will Campbell was selected with their first round pick. Of course, Travion Henderson. I really like this pick. I thought the Bears had a chance to get him, but he goes to New England. That gives them a respectable running back to help take that pressure off of Mac Jones. And the wide receiver Kyle Williams out of Washington State. Shout out Kayla Anderson, friend of the show from Nashville. I think that's going to give Mac Jones another additional target. Remember, they traded for Stephon Diggs during the offseason. So what Mike Vrabel, the former player, now first-year head coach with the team, is trying to do, really make New England a respectable roster going forward. Of course, they drafted a couple of edge rushers and they drafted a couple of safeties as well. So New England, I'm not saying they're going to the playoffs or anything like that, but I think they're going to be much better than what people think. That's going to be a very competitive team. And Mike Vrabel's DNA is written all over it. Like we talked about with Ben Johnson in the last segment for the Bears, Mike Vrabel's DNA is imprinted all over that Patriots roster.
Absolutely. And another team I think that had a good draft, I know there was a buzz about the Giants. Of course, they got Abdul Carter, and they traded back in to get Jackson Dart from Mississippi. Darius Alexander, who was the MAC Defensive Player of the Year from Toledo. Cam Scatterboo, the running back from Arizona State. I know there were some Bears fans, even some people that we know who cover the Bears really wanted him. We're hoping that he was there, but no, they just, the Giants just got him at 4. So that was sorry, Bears fans, though, because they wanted to make him kind of a cult figure. But also the 2 Super Bowl participants from this past season. I think the Chiefs had a nice draft. Of course, Philadelphia had a nice draft as well. They got Jihad Campbell from Alabama. Ty Robinson, Andrew Bakuba from Texas, Smael Madon Jr. from Georgia, Kyle McCord. Of course, he was of course, you guys know he grew up a Philly fan. Also, Pittsburgh as well, staying in Pennsylvania. Caleb Johnson, who I know a lot of Bears fans wanted him. He ended up going to Iowa. From Iowa, he ended up going to Pittsburgh. Jack Sawyer from Ohio State. Also, Will Howard from Ohio State, the quarterback. They ended up reuniting there as well. San Francisco, I think, had a solid draft too. Of course, you got Michael Williams for Georgia, Alfred Collins, Nick Martin, the linebacker from Oklahoma State. I think, another team that I think had a nice draft, Seattle, they had a nice draft too as well. They had a couple tight ends and safeties. And I think Tampa Bay, I think, had a solid draft too. They had 6 picks. They got, of course, Mika Kuba, another Ohio State guy. No one's his name here, folks. Jacob Parrish from Kansas State, Benjamin Morrison. So they got 2 corners, and Tez Johnson, the wide receiver from Oregon. If you guys don't know his story, of course, he was one of Bo Nix's top targets when he was there, when he was at Oregon. Of course, they're Waze's brothers. Of course, he got into a tough situation. Bo's parents and the family, they took him in, and that would have been nice if Denver had drafted him, but they really didn't need a wide receiver. So, but I'm glad they got he could be a good target for Baker Mayfield over there at Tampa.
I want to talk about the Carolina Panthers. Speaking of Tampa Bay, staying in the NFC South. Correction, Jimmy Horn was not selected by Baltimore. He was selected by Carolina. It was just LaJohntay Murray. They went to Baltimore. But congrats to Jimmy Horn. He was selected by the Carolina Panthers. So I think that's a nice target for Bryce Young. Also to Tora McMillan, that wide receiver out of Arizona. I think with their first round pick, I think he's going to be a big target for Bryce Young. Remember, Bryce Young played well once he got his job back at the second half of last year and really had that Carolina team on the move. And also, too, they picked up Trevor Etienne, the running back out of Georgia. Of course, his brother plays for the Jacksonville Jaguars, Travis Etienne. So Trevor gets selected by the Carolina Panthers. And also, too, they selected Cam Jackson, the defensive tackle out of Florida. So they're beefing up their defensive line. I think Carolina very quietly had a good draft as well.
Yeah, they could definitely be. I'm not going to say they're going to win the NFC South, which I mean, hey, they could. I mean, they could. They could. I mean, look, the NFC South, but yeah, they could definitely be a contender there in that division. Seattle, I think, had a really solid pick. Like I said, they got Jalen Moreau in the 3rd round. He could be a mentor for Sam Darnold. So we'll see there. Another team that did well. Oh, Tennessee, I think they. Of course, Cam Ward, Mafuna Lujo from UCLA. I know I butchered that name. Sorry. Kevin Winston Jr. from Penn State. Jamaica DK from Florida. So I think Tennessee had a nice draft source in the AFC South. So yeah, I think all around, I think for the most part, I think teams got what they needed. So that was a nice showing there, as well as some of the notable players there that didn't get drafted, but they did sign via free agency. DJ Golier, of course, he ends up going to the Chargers. So he looks like a guy that Jim Harbaugh would definitely try and mentor. So maybe he could be a nice fit there. Also, to the former, if you guys remember, big D tackle Desmond Wilson from Florida, 6'5", 464. He's going to Tampa Bay, so they may use him. There might be some big guy TD alerts there coming your way from Tampa this year. So yeah, because he did play wide receiver a little bit there, so that might be an interesting one there. So yeah, so a lot of notable guys going there. You like seeing stories like that in the draft, so that was really cool.
One more congratulations going back to the San Diego Chargers of Los Angeles, as we call them on this show. Arande Gasson II, the tight end out of Syracuse, he was selected in the 5th round by the Chargers. Of course, we're getting old, LaKeena. We got to admit, we remember his daddy playing for the Miami Dolphins in the late 90s, early 2000s. We getting old.
Oh God! I mean, that was just weirdness all around there. Also, congrats to Mason Taylor. Of course. His dad, of course, well, his dad, both his dad and his uncle are Hall of Famers. Of course, his dad's Jason Taylor. Of course, his uncle Zach Thomas. The tight end from LSU. He ends up going to the Jets as well. So the Jets end up having a nice draft too, with their first year of their new regime.
All right. You're listening to Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago City. LaKeena here with you. And now as we transition over to baseball, of course, we'll start off with the Chicago Cubs. This did not come to me as a surprise, but the Philadelphia Phillies, they did a number on the Chicago Cubs. They beat the Cubs in extra innings last night, 3-1 in 10 innings on Sunday Night Baseball. The day before, last Saturday, on the Fox Saturday Baseball Game of the Week, they blow out the Cubs 10-4. After the Cubs shut the Phillies out in the opener last Friday after a 2-hour rain delay, 4-0 LaKeena. I'm not really too much worried about this Cubs team overall. As we said, this offense is going to be fun to watch. I thought the pitching was actually solid last night, but the problem is that this Cubs team, as we said, with this offense at various times of the year, you're going to go through this with runners in scoring position. They had their problems last night, even though they scored 4 runs on Saturday. They really had their problems, especially early in that game on Saturday with the bases loaded.
Yeah, I was actually able to actually watch the game yesterday. This was Sunday Night Baseball. Yay, no blackouts, but yeah, that was kind of tough to watch. It was one of those games where, look, it's a long season. Look, there are going to be some times when even some of the best offenses didn't have their look. I think about the Dodgers last year. They didn't, that they were actually some games here and there that they didn't, end up scoring a lot of runs, which happens. Look, and I said this. Look, I think the Phillies needed that game, this series, more than the Cubs did, because I think they were kind of losing a little bit, not losing ground, but they were but the Mets didn't really have a good weekend either. But I think they really needed that this series more than they did. And look, they did their thing last night. They made some defensive plays late, and the Cubs, unfortunately, the bullpen again, that kind of killed them. So again, the bullpen kind of got it, but again, the offense, unfortunately, they didn't show their best stuff last night.
Yeah. And like you said, you're going to have these types of series for the Cubs. Just hopefully it's not a trend that you're going down, that you can't score runs. You're still figuring issues out with your bullpen and who's going to be the closer. And you're trying to figure out the situation over at third base. I know Workman was sent away, and now he's a member of the Chicago White Sox. I will get to those sorry asses. I love them, but we'll get to them in just a minute. But you're trying to figure out your issues at third base and figure out who's going to be closer in the bullpen. Now with Ryan Presley's knee injury, he's out, I believe, a few more days. I know Porter Hodge has stepped in and done a very nice job. Will he be the guy when the season's over? How will Ryan Presley respond whenever he comes back from getting his knee drained? So you still have some issues to work out there, but as long as the starting pitching is consistent enough, I think this offense, you could tell that they have, even though they lost on Saturday, and of course they lost the game last night, you tell with their offense. I think Miguel Amaya said it during that series in one of his post-game presses that we have the confidence, we have the belief that we could come back and win any game in the way we've been swinging it back to start the season. So you like what you hear from the batters, but you just hope that contagious feeling picks up with the starting rotation, and of course, get your issues worked out with the bullpen.
Yeah, they're 17-12. They still lead the division, and they actually started playing teams in their division, starting tomorrow against Pittsburgh. And look, you'll take it. Look, 17-12. Again, that was a tough schedule for the Cubs. Facing World Series contenders and division contenders in the other divisions. So they actually did pretty well. So I'll take that. If you're a Coast fan, you'll take that. So yeah, hopefully it can, work on those little kinks, and hopefully it can get it going there starting tomorrow against Pittsburgh. Now going into the White Sox in Sacramento. Well, I mean, look, they got one game. Yay. And Yeah, and well, I mean, look, they're young guys. Stepped up, and they got that win on Saturday. But again, though they lost, they were right there for both. You could probably say should have won two, if not all three of those games in
Yeah, they
Sacramento.
should only
But
has won 2 out of 3. Yeah.
7-21 there. But what can you say about the White Sox at this point? Unfortunately.
Actually, their starting pitching actually was not the problem. Davis Martin actually pitched well yesterday, but the offense just couldn't come through. Jonathan Kennedy did well for himself last Saturday in that 10-2 win that the Sox had. Of course, it helps that you get double-digit runs, but I thought he was okay. But just what we talked about with the Cubs just a couple of moments ago. You can get men on base, but when you cannot execute a bunt and you can't be creative of moving guys along, if you don't have any base stealers, you're going to face problems of scoring runs consistently. In the White Sox this year, I believe they're batting 179 with runners in scoring position. That's not good. We're not talking about a 1 and 2 week stretch. This has been the case the whole year. And I know I believe they're now 1-8 in 1-run games after yesterday's loss. But LaKeena, we talked about this before. Until the guys that's supposed to be up here come up here, like Kyle Teal, hopefully, and Tim Elko, hopefully replacing Andrew Vaughn. I got my fingers crossed. Those of you not looking right now. The Sox really need some juice within that offense. Like I said for the last couple of weeks, I tried to fight off Christine, the Queen Manica, our co-host on Fridays. Andrew Vaughn did what he had to do when he first came up here, but these last couple of years, LaKeena, I love him as a person. Thank you for what you did, especially during that 2021 season when you were a replacement for Eloy and winning the division. But your days are done. Hashtag Vaughn gone. Bring Tim Elko up here now.
Yeah, I think for a lot of these guys, if you could somehow trade Vaughn for somebody, I don't know who or what you're gonna get from him, but
you ain't getting up for him now.
Yeah, especially since he has been playing well. So it'll be interesting to see what Chris Guest does for the next month or two. Because it's well, you're 7-21, and it's not. You got to play the Brewers starting tomorrow, and of course at the G rate, and it's going to be interesting to see what the Sox do. Can they do something when this home maybe win a couple of series, perhaps? So gonna get kind of interesting there with that. So we'll see what happens there. Now, real quick, I know we were up against it. Talking about the rest of MLB real quick. Eugenio Suarez, he was actually 3 home runs behind starting the weekend. But of course, he went 4 for 4 in 4 consecutive home runs. Unfortunately, they lost. the D-bats did. So but yeah, I mean, look, I think that was a really nice showing on his part. But yeah, it's unfortunate because they did win. They did win one of those games against the Braves. Of course, they ended up losing the series, unfortunately, including that crazy one on Saturday. But but yeah, I mean, just not a good showing by the D-bats. They were able to capitalize on some of those games there.
Speaking of team that's bouncing back, that's the Kansas City Royals. I know that they lost yesterday to the Astros, but they're almost near 500. And also, too, let's give props to the Boston Red Sox. They're back on track. They swept the Cleveland Guardians in Cleveland over the weekend. And also, to the New York Mets. I know some folks in New York want to, excuse the expression, jump off a bridge, especially after losing the 7-1 lead yesterday. You're talking about the Cubs having bullpen problems here in Chicago on the north side. The Mets have their own issues. They got to get it straightened out fast because in a division where you had the Mets, we have the Braves and you have the Phillies. If you don't get those issues straightened out real quick, you'll be lagging far behind.
Also, the Dodgers with a nice 2 out of 3. They lost the series. They lost the opener against Paul Skeens, which I think.
Yeah, shout out Paul Skeens. He pitched a great game against Yamamoto last Friday. Yes.
Yeah, he had Yamamoto there. Of course, I think a lot of Dodgers fans were too mad about that, but they did win the other 2, so you'll take that if you're the Dodgers. Cincy, they've won 4 in a row. They swept the Rockies. The Rockies are just, but I don't think there's really more you can say about the Rockies at this point. So,
Bud Black must have a lifetime membership to that organization or something. He hasn't been fired. Is it all his fault? Absolutely not. But what's going on with that franchise is really beyond me. They were battling the Cubs for the wild card about 6-7 years ago before Jordan Manning got the boot. and now they've fallen to this this bottom cellar of baseball. It makes no sense.
The Yankees get the series against Toronto after winning both the doubleheader sweep. Aaron Judge, of course, he broke. There was a tie there. Of course, he hit a home run there. Max Fried, won his 5th straight start also yesterday, so he outdueled Kevin Gossman there. So yeah, that was a nice little show there. The Yankees are starting to kind of get going there a little bit as well in that division. Detroit, they have won 4 in a row. They swept the Orioles. So we've talked about the Orioles. I feel bad for them. And I know some people will say that, well, they hung on to their. I think we talked about it on Friday too. I mean, that they held on to their prospects too long. I just think that there just wasn't. It was just bad managing, and just the fact that they didn't get the pitching that they needed to, and such. So yeah, I don't want to say that this is it for Baltimore, but it's not looking good for them at this point.
Yeah, I kind of get that feeling too, but we'll see what they do as the month of May commences on us on Thursday. Of course, when we come back for our next episode on Friday, it'll be the second day of May already. So, Baltimore, I want to see what they could do. As we say all the time in baseball, Memorial Day is the first day you can have a sense of where teams are going, and we've seen that we've seen over years that teams that get out to slow starts, they eventually catch up. We had the 2 last year with the Detroit Tigers and, of course, the New York Mets. But I'm not going to say we're not going to see that this year. But Baltimore needs to have that similar turnaround. They need to get going now. And like you said, it starts with starting pitching, which right now you just don't see it.
Going to the schedule for this week, you got the Mets and the Nationals. The first game of that series will be later today at 3 o'clock on MLB Network. Minnesota and Cleveland should be interesting. I know Cleveland had a pretty good weekend there. Speaking of the Baltimore Orioles, they host the Yankees. St. Louis and Cincy, again, the first game of that series will be on MLB Network. The Sacramento A's will take on Texas, Detroit, and Houston. That should be a fun one there. Atlanta and Colorado, only Colorado Rockies, and Miami and the Dodgers. Dodgers hoping to kind of gain some more ground in that NL West.
All right, other series there will be starting tomorrow. Of course, the LaKeena's Chicago Cubs will visit the Pittsburgh Pirates. St. Louis will visit Cincinnati. Washington will pay a visit to the city of brotherly love, playing the Philadelphia Phillies. Kansas City will travel to Tampa. Boston will face Toronto in the first game of MLB Network's coverage. That's tomorrow at 6 o'clock. Arizona will visit New York to take on the Mets. Others will see that game on MLB Network. As LaKeena mentioned a moment ago, Milwaukee and Chicago renew their rivalry, in quotes. I know Milwaukee's in the National League now, but when we were growing up, they were in the American League. Those were some good old days. Other series there will start tomorrow. Oakland at Texas, Atlanta at Colorado, Detroit at Houston, the LA Angels at LaKeena's other favorite team, the Seattle Mariners, San Francisco, San Diego, and, of course, Miami and Los Angeles. And, of course, the Amazon Prime Video Game of the Week will be the New York Yankees and the Baltimore Orioles. That'll be Wednesday at 5:35 p.m. Central Standard Time on Prime Video. That's a New York Yankees broadcast.
And that is the schedule for the first part of the week in MLB.
Hour number 1 comes to a close. Hour number 2 opens up following this timeout. We have to talk about the NBA playoffs. LeBron James and Luka Doncic are 1 game away from being sent home to summer vacation. Detroit and the Knicks go down to the wire. Controversy? We'll unpack. And the Denver-LA Clippers series, is it destined for 7 games? And we'll review the NHL Stanley Cup playoffs, plus Old School TV Monday, and a whole lot more. Stick and stay as you listen to the Monday edition of Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago. I'm Sid. That's LaKeena. We'll be right back.
No, I don't know, though. I'm scared. I mean, you're so...
Do you know that you're in my lane?
No, not at all.
Are you not paying attention? Are you texting?
I was just checking in with my mom. I was telling her that I thought we'd be home by 6.
It's okay. There's enough time. Just pay attention. I'm not even halfway through my text. There's no way. I'm not even going to look up. My babies are in the car. You have to pay attention. It's just supposed to be a quick text. I'm so sorry.
Hi, I'm Tom Brady, the director of DODEA. September is National Suicide Prevention and Awareness Month. The simple act of reaching out and caring for those in our communities is something we all can do. Just being there for someone you care about can be a tremendous first step in getting them access to confidential resources and support that they need. It only takes one person and one small act and 1 minute to make a difference. Let's make a difference.
Many will hear the calling. Few will earn the title. United States Marine. The few, the proud, the Marines.
Welcome back to hour number 2 of Second City Sports on this Monday extravaganza, the last Monday extravaganza edition for the month of April. Say that 5 times fast. You're locked and loaded, and we're live in the living color right here on Sports Zone Chicago. I'm Sid, that's LaKeena. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter, X, and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, it's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
You follow McGee on the Twitter, X, again, IG.
As we dive into the NBA playoffs for this segment, if you have any questions or comments regarding the NBA playoffs, you can definitely hit us up at Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or at Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in those questions and comments in the comment section. LaKeena will get them up on the screen for you.
All right, Sid. Go into the playoffs for a second.
Playoffs?
Yeah, we'll start with the NBA playoffs, and we'll just get this out of the way. Shout out to our buddy Spiro Diaz from TNT, who had the call. Unfortunately, the Thunder have advanced. They swept Memphis, and again, not a big shocker. So it is what it is with that. But yeah, I'm looking forward to they're going to be waiting. I think they're going to be waiting a little bit for who their opponent is, but we'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, let's talk about the rest of the series. We'll start with from yesterday. We'll start with again, we'll get this one out the way. Indiana and Milwaukee. It was all Indiana for the most part, especially Dame came back. Unfortunately, now it's been official. He tore his Achilles, and he kind of knew it if you saw his reaction on his face last night. 23 points for Mr. Miles Turner. The Pacers take a 3-1 lead, and perhaps end it tomorrow. So that was tough to watch. So seeing Dan, because I know he worked his butt off to get back after those blood clots, but only to tear your Achilles. It's just poor Dave. You got. I feel bad for him all over.
Yeah, so do I. And we talked about this on the show last year. He was going through some personal stuff off the court. We won't get into that, but he was injured. He could not participate in last year's playoffs, and unfortunately, it's the same story this year. He only played a game and a half before he suffered that Achilles in a non-contact not to contact play
Brutal.
last night. So you feel for him. I know the question is going to start. It has already started, at least on social media anyway. Well, Giannis Antetokounmpo asked for a trade this summer. I believe he has 2 years left on that contract. So we'll see what happens there. So, but as far as the game last night is concerned, Bobby Portis, their emotional leader, he tried to start some stuff, and then you can see Milwaukee's frustrations out on the court. There was a couple of verbal exchanges last night, and they really tried to intimidate the Pacers. But the Pacers, just like last year, they didn't back down from this Bucks team, and the Pacers were hot from the outside. You mentioned Miles Turner had a good game. Tyrese Halliburton made some big shots, and also too T.J. McConnell, their backup guard, coming off the bench, he made some big shots as well. So to give head coach Rick Carlisle credit, as I told you, you can back me up on this. I said during the All-Star break, watch out for the Indiana Pacers. Will they go back to the Eastern Conference Finals? No, but they're going to give whoever they play in the playoffs a hard time, even though Milwaukee is riddled again. The Pacers showing that what they did last year was no fluke.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, look, I think you give the Pacers credit, I think, for kind of sending the message, getting that going there early on. So I would say, look, good for them. And look, I kind of feel like, again, this is, you feel, of course, you feel bad for the Milwaukee because, look, they came back. They were able to at least get a game. But again, they're going back to Indiana. Of course, they're down 3-1 now. So it looks like, I don't want to say it's over, but it kind of is over unfortunately, for the Bucks. And the whole thing with Giannis, we'll have time to talk about that over the off season, but that's going to be a dominant story.
Yeah. In the other Eastern Conference first round matchup, Jason Tatum makes his return for the Boston Celtics. No problem for the Celtics as they grab a commanding 3-1 series lead, beating the Orlando Magic in the stadium used to call the O Arena last night, 107-98. We can safely say that series is over. Although they were going to sweep, obviously they didn't. Of course, Tatum missed Game 3 on Friday where the Magic won by 2, but Boston restored order yesterday, and they're going to wrap up this series in short order to head back home for Game 5 tomorrow. I want to talk about this series, LaKeena, going to the Western Conference. It was the second half of the ABC doubleheader yesterday. It was the Minnesota Timberwolves behind Anthony Edwards' 43 points. They beat the Lakers 116-113. Luka and LeBron, they're now one game away from being eliminated from the playoffs. We talked about the Lakers, LaKeena, and their lack of depth is definitely shown in this series. On the flip side for Minnesota, we talked about Rudy Gobert doing our playoff preview show. We don't know he was going to be a factor, but Nasri has really cleared series along with Dante DiVincenzo. He hasn't shown up much outside of Game 1, but he's really made some contributions during these last 2 games, LaKeena. I don't want to say this is over, but if you're head coach JJ Redick for the Lakers, what can you do at this point? It has given you nothing. I know going with the Florida game with LeBron, Luka. I know also Reeves has shown up here and there, but outside of those 3, you really have gotten much from the rest of the role players. You really haven't, unless I'm missing something.
Well, yeah, I know people want to bash LeBron. There's like all the LeBron bashes out there. Oh, see, LeBron stinks. So let's remember, folks, the man's 40 years old. I mean, it's kind of silly. And we know that Luka, fitness that's one of the reasons why Dallas, Mavs GM, defends that trade because of Luka's fitness. It was starting to show there, especially during the end of that game. But look, Jackson Hayes, only 2 points. Really, dude? Seriously? Jared Vanderbilt, where were you, dude? Gabe Vincent, where were you? So, it's just one of those things where this is sort of they got to the 3 seed.
That's what I'm talking about.
But you just mentioned, that they got to the 3 seed. But again, we knew that the lack of depth was going to come back to bite them in the butt. And they have, people forget Minnesota, they went to the Western Conference Finals last year. It's not like this team is some, up and comer. I mean, look, Julius Randle has contributed a lot. Jaden McDaniels, hit some big shots late. Naz Reid hit some big shots late. For the T-Wolves. So it's not like these guys are just some, team, like up and comer. I mean, they've been right there all season. So again, they were a big physical team. We knew that was going to be a problem for the Lakers, and unfortunately, it's starting to show. And Anthony Edwards, when we'll get into his personal life, that's a different show.
Google that yourself.
But yeah. Yeah, exactly. And for 43 points, that's a career playoff high for him. And look, he's showing you why he's one of the top players, in the playoffs. So should the should the T-Wolves hang on and perhaps win tomorrow? I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, look, honestly, it's one of those things where like this is not a fluke, folks. I think for people that want to give Minnesota credit, look, give Chris Fisher credit too. He was a finalist for Coach of the Year last year. So I don't know what else more can I say about this T-Wolves this series. I mean, you hope that if somehow Luka and LeBron can come back and like lead the Lakers, but they're gonna need some help. They just need it.
I believe, excuse me, Game 5 is on Wednesday, correct? If I'm not mistaken. So the Lakers will have an extra day to think about it. So I think the Lakers will win Game 5, but they'll have to go back to the Target Center on Friday should it be a Game 6 and win there. But if I believe that if the Lakers take care of business in Game 5, which I think they will, if they can get Game 6, I think Game 7, I'm not going to say it's a foregone conclusion, but I think the Lakers will win Game 7 if they can win the next two games. So pressure is on the line for LeBron James and crew. And LeBron James has been in this position before 9 years ago when he was with Cleveland, trailing Golden State 3-1 in the NBA Finals. Of course, they came back to win the championship and win that series in 7. So still a pressure situation. I think the Lakers will get Game 5, but Game 6 will be the game for me. Whatever they can put out on Wednesday, assuming that they win, they have to turn it up that much more because the way that the Lakers play, even though I thought they did play better yesterday than they did last Friday night, that Minnesota Timberwolves team plays much different at home than they do on the road. So the Lakers, assuming that they win Game 5 on Wednesday, they're going to have to match that intensity for the Timberwolves when they go back to the Target Center for a potential Game 6 on Friday. If they win Game 5 at home on Wednesday.
All right, going back to another game that's the Knicks edged out the Pistons 3-1, and I know there was definitely some controversy there. There was that that shot that Tim Hardaway Jr. tried to shoot, and it looks like Josh Hart did get him on the hip a little bit. Some people were Detroit. JB Bickerstaff was about to go crazy. That whole arena, Little Caesars Arena, was about to go nuts as well. But
he was about to go swinging at one of the refs.
He wanted to swing at somebody, but look, 14 points Knicks scored in the third quarter, I should say. You were up 10 with about 10 minutes left in the fourth. You should have put the Knicks away. Sorry, Pistons fans. I know. Look, did Hart get away with a foul? I think even the referee presser that they did afterwards, it was a foul. Again, you should have hung on to win that game. You should be up 3-1 right now, or at most it should be tied. So look, I don't. Yeah, you can say it's definitely an experience and such, but it's like there's no excuse for that. Detroit. I know. Kate Cunningham had 25 for the Pistons. Tobias Harris had 18 points. This is his first radio in the playoffs. But everyone else has to show up. I mean, Sir Thompson, where are you at, dude? Jalen Duren, where are you at, dude? Especially in these situations where the Pistons, are trying to kind of put these games away. They haven't been able to do that. Now, Jalen Brunson, you can tell he's banged up. He came, back and scored 32, especially led that rally for the Knicks to win that game. But you got to think that it's going to get to a point where he's not going to be able to do it anymore.
And I want to bring up Karl Anthony Towns. We talked about last week on the show. He had the terrible performance in Game 2 where the Pistons won, and Catman only had 10 points. He stepped it up over the weekend in Detroit, scoring 30-plus points. So I know he had 32 points yesterday, including the go-ahead three-point shot, which gave the Knicks the 94-93 win. Karl Anthony Towns has been aggressive these last couple of games. You talk about Jalen Brunson doing it all, quote unquote. He scored 12 points in the fourth quarter the last couple of games. He scored, I believe, 15 points in the fourth quarter yesterday. So once Karl Anthony Towns figures out that where he can pick his spots to help out Jalen Brunson, I think this next team is going to be okay. In which you mentioned with the last call, I know the referees really don't want to decide the games down the stretch, but when you have plays like that, when Tim Hardaway Jr. was fouled by Josh Hart, he barely grazed him with the hip. Those situations you just have to call it, and I get it that replay is a very funny thing, and we'll get to another game that had that situation in just a moment. But that Tim Hardaway Jr. play at the last second, he was fouled, and so by the technicality of the rule, he was fouled. But I could understand why. I'm not saying I'm defending it, but I can understand why the refs didn't call it. You really don't want to decide the game there. But whereas there's plays that are obvious that there are fouls or infractions that you just have to call it.
I think, yeah, that's true. But again, it never should have gotten to that point. I mean, Pistons should have put that game away. Sorry, that's just my mindset. And I think it's one of those days where you're just like I said, I mean, the Pistons would have, put those games away. And yeah, you could say that's a lack of experience. But look, you should be up. Look, sorry, Pistons, you should be up 3-1, or it should be tied at 2. That's just, that's my sentiment. So, speaking of that time, well, you're going to Saturday's games real quick. Steph Curry had 36 points. We saw a little vintage playoff Steph there as Golden State won a pivotal Game 3 against Houston, and looked like Jimmy Butler might play Game 4 tonight. So, so I'm not gonna say the series is over, but again, if he's able to play tonight, I'm talking about Jimmy Butler. Looks like the experience of the Warriors are kind of going through there, and Houston need to get it together. We'll see what happens. They can do that. Now, speaking of the time differences, go ahead. Sorry.
I want to discuss about the Houston Golden State game real quick. I know Houston got out to a nice start in their first quarter, but the Warriors came back and obviously made a game of it by halftime. But the Rockets really struggled to score to start that second half. I know they had some balanced scoring with Shagun and Amir Thompson. Dylan Brooks, I know he eventually fouled out, but he had 4 fouls once again in the first half. That's inexcusable. I partially blame it on him. I partially blame that on Ime Udoka, the coach of the Rockets. If he had, when a player has 2 fouls, especially early game, you yank him out to protect themselves, but you let them stay in the game and commit 4 fouls in the first half. That's inexcusable, especially during the playoffs. On the flip side, for the Warriors, you mentioned Steph Curry with 36 points, but Brandon Podziemski had 10 points, and also Gary Payton II had 16 points. Nice to see his dad out there cheering him on. Once again, he was in the crowd, and of course, Buddy Hield, who's really struggled in this series, he had 17 points off the bench last night, picking up the production from the absence of Jimmy Butler. So, Jonathan Kuminga, he didn't do that much, even though he had 7 points. Remember, Steve Kerr hasn't played them that much during the last couple of weeks of the regular season, so far through the first couple of games of this series. But he did a little something on last Saturday, scoring 7 points. But after Steph Curry, it was a total team effort. They did lock down defensively, especially on Jalen Green, who busted out for the Rockets last week in the Game 2 performance. He only scored 9 points for Houston once again on Saturday. So I thought that the defense was very good on Jalen Green for the Warriors. So it was an overall team win for the Warriors. Even though Steph Curry does get the headlines for scoring those 36 points, I thought it was the supporting cast that really held it down and got the win.
Yeah, it was really an overall team win there by Golden State, and we'll see if they can. Look, I think Houston. I think that's just bad, not very good discipline on their part, especially getting 4 fouls within like the 12 minutes. That was just really silly on his Brooks's part. But hopefully they can bounce back tonight, but especially with Jimmy Butler back, it's going to be a tough go. We'll see if Houston can do that. Now going back to LA, this time with the Clippers across town. They lose a tough one to the Nuggets. This was actually a back and forth game for a while. The third or fourth quarter, I mean, it was just nuts. 35-17, the Nuggets outscored the Clippers, but the Clippers came back. It was back and forth for a little bit, and it was tied. But Jokic shot a shot that was well short, and of course Aaron Gordon. Okay, whose job was to box him out? Hey, Harden, you were just standing over there.
Thank you.
Who were you standing over there? Hey, James Harden. Hey, Norman Powell, or whoever was supposed to be over there. Why did you box out Aaron Gordon? Yeah, that nice hands up play by Gordon, but again, who was supposed to box him out? Ty Lue, that's on you, dude. So, I mean, now they're tied at 2. I think they are going to be this. I think this is going to go 7. And OKC, I think you may have to do scrimmages to get yourselves because this series is going to take a while.
That was my takeaway from this game as well, LaKeena. I forgot who had that skirmish early. It was James Harden and I believe it was Christian Brown who had that verbal skirmish, and then I think Aaron Gordon came from behind to defend his teammate, and there was some technical fouls being given out, but no one got thrown out, thank goodness. But I know some people may talk about the way that playoff basketball is played compared to the regular season. You don't want the animosity to build up a little bit, but you don't want to get too far out of hand. And this has been, call me crazy, LaKeena. I'm not gonna say this is the best series of all time. That BS, not yet. It is far from this series is far from over, but this definitely has been an entertaining series to watch. We talked about it last week on the show. The Clippers should have won Game 1 last Saturday afternoon. They didn't do it. Of course, they bounced back in Game 2 this time last week. Of course, last Thursday they blew out Denver in Game 3, and they should have won Game 4 last Saturday. As we talk about all the time in sports, especially during the NBA playoffs, it always comes down to the little things. Yes, they called Denver off guard. There was a great comeback in the fourth quarter, but it's the little things between winning and losing, and perhaps between winning and losing a series. And if the Clippers go on to lose this series, that last play last Saturday will tell you why that they lost.
Box out. Just saying. Yeah. So, like I said, OKC, I think you may have to. I think Coach D is going to have to maybe have some scrimmages with his guys because, like I said, this series is going to take a while. Now going to another game. Cleveland and Miami. Cleveland. I thought Miami was going to steal one. I guess that's not going to happen. Jared Allen scored 22 as the Cavs get a 3-0 lead, I should say, over Miami, and Bam only had 22 points. It looks like, barring a collapse like Cleveland, could in this tonight. We'll see, but yeah, it's not good for Miami at this point.
I don't know about you, LaKeena. I really didn't watch much of that game. I did check up on it, but I saw some empty seats, and maybe that's telling you something. I know it was scheduled. That game was the first game, so it was on at 12 noon here in Chicago, 1 o'clock Eastern, in Miami on a early Saturday afternoon. So maybe it was part of the reason why that it wasn't a full sellout crowd. I would think that would be it, but maybe it's just a couple of fans sending the message that we really don't like this Miami Heat team. But I'm not down there, so I don't really know. But as we said during our playoff preview show, the Cleveland Cavaliers, they're proving to you that the regular season was not a fluke. They're a way better team in Miami, and they're taking care of business. I'll be shocked if they lose tonight. So the way they performed on last Saturday in Game 3, that's the way a team should dominate a lesser opponent.
Yeah, so I didn't watch a single moment of that game either, so don't feel bad. So yeah, it was just seeing a lot of empty seats there. Again, that's unfortunately, you were thinking with Miami playoff basketball, but unfortunately, that wasn't the case there. So we'll see what happens tonight. Speaking of tonight's games, going to this week's games for the playoffs, you got of course, could the Cavs wrap it up tonight against Miami? We'll see. That's going to be at 6:30 on TNT, True TV, and Max, a doubleheader there. Also, the second game of the doubleheader, we'll see if Houston can even up this series against Golden State. Of course, Jimmy Butler will play tonight, so that game is also on TNT, True TV, and streaming on Max.
Your schedule for Tuesday tomorrow looks like this: the Bucks and Pacers will do battle in Game 5. That's at 5 o'clock weird time on NBA TV, 5 o'clock Chicago time. The Pistons and the Knicks will do battle from MSG in Game 5 as the Knicks will try to wrap up their series. They lead their series 3-1. That's at 6:30 on TNT, followed by a second game of the NBA TV doubleheader. It will be Game 5 of the Magic Celtics series. Boston leads that series 3-1. That game time will be at 7:30 p.m. on Tuesday. That's on NBA TV. And, of course, the nightcap on TNT tomorrow will be Game 5 between the Clippers and the Nuggets back at Ball Arena, formerly known as Pepsi Arena in Denver, Colorado. That series is tied up at 2 games apiece. That's at 9 o'clock p.m. tomorrow on TNT.
Last day of April, Wednesday, Miami and Cleveland again, if necessary. Again, this is yeah. I mean, this is always going to change depending on what happens tonight. Golden State and Houston, that might be the first game. It may not be, but this game will be on TNT. True TV is just streaming on Max the rest of these games. And Miami and Los Angeles. So we'll see. The Lakers have got an extra day off to kind of stew on that. Minnesota. I'm sorry. We'll see. They'll get a chance to stew on that loss. The Lakers will. So we'll see if they can force a Game 6 on Wednesday. They will also be on TNT. True TV is streaming on Max.
And your schedule for Thursday looks like this, times to be announced, but if it goes to Game 6, we'll have Magic and Celtics Game 6. I don't think it's going to be necessary personally. The Pistons and the Knicks Game 6, if necessary, will be on Thursday. I think it will be necessary personally, but if the Pistons win tomorrow, Game 6 will happen on Thursday in Detroit, and of course the Nuggets and the Clippers will play Game 6. Now this is going to be for sure on the late night, so time will be announced shortly. So the Nuggets, the Clippers, for sure, we know that Game 6 will happen on Thursday. They'll be on TNT. The other two games I just mentioned, if necessary.
All is if necessary is or that time of year, kids. Yeah, well, I am kind of with Christine though. I do miss the days where these games were like, the first round was only like best of 5. I miss those days, but gotta love television.
Yeah, television has a lot to say. We want more games because we're paying top dollar to broadcast your games. This is what you got.
And that's the schedule for this week in the NBA playoffs. All right.
We gotta take our 2-2. When we return, we'll review in action on the NHL. We'll review the action from the weekend in hockey. We're going to do that hockey in the Stanley Cup playoffs. The Kings and Oilers fit to be tied. The Hurricanes and the Devils, let's just say yours truly is not happy for the moment. And the Washington Capitals are 1 game away from advancing to the second round. We'll have sports media news and time permitting, old school TV Monday. That and a whole lot more. You stick and stay right here on Second City Sports Soul Chicago.
This year, my mom got me the perfect bag for back to school.
These colorful binders help me stay organized.
These headphones are just what I need for studying.
These new sneakers are just what I need for the new year.
This jacket is a real must-have.
My parents got me the skateboard I wanted. It's pretty cool.
These scissors really come in handy in art class.
These colored pencils, too. These new socks? They can be a real lifesaver. I finally got my own phone to stay in touch with my mom.
Trisha's having a sleepover tonight. Can I go?
I wonder about Lucy's friends. What should I say? I know you're only 10, but one of these days a friend will offer you a drink. And alcohol at your age can lead to so many things. None of them good.
So can I go to the sleepover?
Lucy, I want you to promise me
I
something.
finished my homework.
Bigger promise. If there's any drinking, I want you to say, "No thanks, not my thing."
Mom.
I promise you, your real friends won't care. Deal?
Sure.
Really?
I promise, Mom.
They really do hear you.
Did you pack your toothbrush?
For tips on how to start the talk, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov, a public service message from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.
Hey, this is Dr. J, and I listen to Sean and Maya in the morning.
Welcome back to Second City Sports, the Monday extravaganza edition, in our sports potpourri segment of the program. I'm Sid, that's LaKeena. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter, X, and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, it's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
You can find McGee on the Twitter, X, and IG.
This is our last regular show today, doing our sports potpourri segment. We got to come up with a GIF at some point. This is our last regular show for today. So if you have any last minute questions or comments of any of the topics that we discussed on today's show, you can definitely hit us up at Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or at Sports Zone Chicago YouTube. Type in those questions or comments in the comment section. We'll get the up on the screen for you.
We got some interesting coaching changes here in the NHL, but we're gonna do the actual playoff ice game hockey first. So we'll get to that over the weekend. Very busy NHL Stanley Cup playoff weekend here. Some very interesting results. We'll start with yesterday's games from last night. Edmonton ties their series with the Kings at 4-3, and I actually saw a little bit of this game once that Pacers game, Pacers game kind of ended there. So I took my concentration over to this game, and
I don't blame you.
yeah, Leon Draisaitl got the overtime goal there for the Oilers, beating the Kings, and they they're tied at 2, and it was right at the end of the of overtime. So so the Oilers, we said this could go 6 or 7, so that's like it's gonna happen.
I made my prediction that the Kings will win this series of 7 because they have the home ice advantage. I know they're one of the top 5 teams in record rights at home this year, but playing on the road, especially in a hostile environment, Edmonton, where many of those players have played in those playoff series for the previous few years. But it's just something about this Kings team that, when it gets down to it, that I don't like. You had to, as we talked about in our previous segment regarding the NBA playoffs, they had to know the situation and execute the little things. And the Kings had a 3-1 lead in the third period. They let that slip away last night. And as soon as you saw Edmonton tie the game toward the end of regulation, you knew that this game was over and the momentum had swung to the Oilers. So congratulations to Edmonton. If you're a Kings fan, you definitely do not want Connor McDavid, the best hockey player on the planet, to bust out, because if he does, this series is over. So the Kings go back home for a game 5. Hopefully they can take care of business there like they did the first 2 games.
Did they this is Draisaitl, I think, like a second or third overtime goal in the playoffs. So not his first rodeo there, but
And also too, LaKeena, and I saw it said, I believe it was this game, coming into this contest, the Kings were 7 for 12 on the power play, and that's really what's been helping them in this series. So I know Edmonton really likes to rub things up, and they really take their chances. Those penalties in those first 2 games in Los Angeles really hurt them, but they really fought back in these last 2 games. I'm talking about Edmonton. So if Edmonton plays a smart, conservative defensive game tomorrow, and we'll see if they can steal game 5. Because if Edmonton steals game 5, it's over.
Yeah, it really is. So we'll see what happens there. Now, staying in Canada, the Capitals, they beat the Canadians 5-2. Andrew Montcalm scored the goal-ahead goal with another 4 minutes left, and Brandon Duhaime had 2 goals. Logan Thompson made 16 saves for the Capitals as they beat the Canadians and taking care of business there. It's 3-1, and we thought that maybe there would be a gentleman's sweep. So if the Canadians don't come back and at least force a game 6, it looks like this series is probably over with.
Yeah, this series is over. I know Alexander Ovechkin hasn't really busted out yet, but we have a well-balanced team like the Capitals do. You have other guys contributing. And shout out to Dylan Strome, who got the first star of the game, though, a one-time former Blackhawk. He had 1 goal and 1 assist last night in that 5-2 win. So as we talked about before, if you're the better team than the opponent across from you handle business, and that's what the Capitals did.
Nice win for the Caps. They're taking care of business. I know Sid's not happy about this result. Hurricanes beat the Devils 5-2, and it's sort of like I think. Look, the Hurricanes. You thought that I would look. I said Hurricanes in 6, so I'm a little disappointed.
Yeah, the Devils in 7 for those you scoring at home.
Yeah, so unfortunately, this hasn't been the case here, at least right now. Svechnikov for the Hurricanes had a hat trick, and it was just they just really couldn't stop him. Once he scored that second goal, it was basically all. Now to their credit, the Devils did come back and score two to cut it in to make it a one score game, but. Unfortunately, Shinnikov had one of those goals, scored one of those goals in the third period, which that was all she wrote there.
Yeah, and I think the first period of yesterday's game, I'm talking about for the Devils, did them into Carolina, jumped out to an early 3-0 lead. And like you said, the Devils did try to claw back, got into it within one, but it was too much Hurricane. So I'm not going to sit here and say the series is over yet. I'm not going to do that because we've seen some strange things, especially in the Stanley Cup playoffs. So I think New Jersey can get Game 5, but it's definitely going to be tough.
Yes, his second career playoff hat trick for Svechnikov. So yeah. So that was it was good to see that. Like I said, I picked a Hurricane, so that was that was good for me last night. Now, one series on this side though, go to the back to the Western Conference for a second. St. Louis, scored 5 goals. They beat Winnipeg, and now they're tied in their series. I mean, I thought that maybe Winnipeg was going to wrap this up, but yeah, Brady Shin said not. Yeah, I mean, Brady Shin said not so fast. Goals reached, by him, Tyler Tucker, and Justin Falk, and in the second period, that kind of was all Blues, and it was just like Winnipeg. What's going on here, Jets?
Two factors here. Jordan Binnington has really played well for the Blues in that he did it yet again yesterday, and the Blues play in front of their home fans. I think that's where it really got them going yesterday. They had more energy than the Winnipeg Jets did. This series should be really 3-1. Winnipeg going back to Canada, but now you're going to be forced to play Game 6. I know Game 5 is back at home ice for the Jets, but just like we talked about in the other series with the Kings and Oilers, if you're Winnipeg going back to your place for Game 5, if you don't win that one, I think this series could be over because St. Louis obviously has the momentum right now. They shouldn't even be in this thing, LaKeena. They should be packing up, going home. But after that inspiring performance yesterday, they had all the energy on that ice. Winnipeg didn't. If Winnipeg doesn't pick it up, being back home, coming up in Game 5 in a couple of days, it's going to be trouble for them. I know we talked about them being the favorites on paper to get to the Stanley Cup final, but the way they've been playing these last couple of games, they haven't looked like it.
Oh, and I want to give it to TNT, to Turner. Like, really, you're not gonna send your guys up north? I know you're trying to save costs and stuff. You've got baseball, you got the French Open coming up in about a month, and I get that, but come on, you got the Stanley Cup final this year. If a Winnipeg or if Edmonton, probably not Montreal, but if any of the Canadian or Ottawa, if any of those Canadian teams make it to the Stanley Cup final, you're not going to send Emilio McHugh and the rest of that group up there. Really, you're not going to do that.
So that's what we saw in 2020 is coming back to light here 5 years later. So I'm not surprised we really looking into this, but like you said, LaKeena, bad business decisions, but I understand why they are making them. I ain't saying I agree with it, but I'm with you on this one. But some of the stuff we saw in 2020, they're sneaking back in slowly without people paying attention to. But thank goodness you have us paying attention to translate this here on Second City Sports. So yeah, bad move for TNT. I get it, but it doesn't really look good from the optics of it.
No, it doesn't. Going to Saturday's games, of course. Colorado, they shut out Dallas. They've tied their series as well. Look, I think I had Dallas in 6, so I guess my prediction is still coming to fruition here. But yeah, shout out to Gabriel Landeskog. Scored his first NHL goal in 3 years. So he had a knee injury. It's a long story, but yeah, he made his debut a couple of games ago. He got his first goal in only 3 years. He led the way for Colorado, and now they've tied their series against Dallas.
Yeah, Dallas, another team that has completely lost their mojo, and that's the Dallas Stars. They lost Game 1 by a bad third period, bounced back in Game 2. They won Game 3, but lost Game 4. This has really been a seesaw of a series, literally for both of these teams. For Dallas, they really got blitzed. Colorado picked up on the energy surge early, as you mentioned. Gabriel Landeskog scoring his first goal in playoff goal in 3 years. Congrats to him. But Dallas has to get it back together on offense. Going into the quarters, create some traffic in front of that net, and go back to being the Dallas Stars offensively that we've seen and known them to be over these last few years. So Dallas, they got to turn around quickly, as Game 5 will go back down to Texas at American Airlines Center. So arena. So Dallas, if they don't show up tonight, I believe this series. So as we said, these two teams are both evenly matched, and we hated to see this matchup in the first round, but Dallas obviously got to be more the aggressive team here going back home.
Absolutely. And going back to Canada, Toronto, they had a chance to seal the series against Ottawa, but Jake Sanderson had other ideas as he scored the goal in overtime for Ottawa as they forced a Game 5. I'm not worried about Toronto. I mean, they got a little bit of a cushion there. They're a veteran squad. They know, well, I hope they do. They know what not to do. So yeah, hopefully they can win this series. But yeah, I'm not worried about Toronto just yet.
I'm not either.
All right. Back to the thing. Oh, going back to the Western Conference. Vegas, again, this is a theme for overtime goals, folks. This time Vegas, of course, they forced a tie with the Wild and the Golden Knights. This time it was Bubeshev who scored the game winner in overtime. Ivan Barshev. So yeah, this series just got interesting.
Yeah, I think I had the Golden Knights in 6, I believe. So I'm right on track thus far. I know Minnesota has been one of those surprising teams in the Western Conference this year, but the Vegas Golden Knights, as we know in the last few years, okay, they're a tested, a young bunch. They really get up in your grill, and they really make you work for everything that you get. And so, this series has been no different. So I'm not surprised at the results. I know many people are. Some people really thought that Minnesota should be leading the series 3-1, but this is Stanley Cup playoffs. Anything can happen. So any momentum surge that you have, you got to take advantage of it. The Vegas Golden Knights did here. So I won't be surprised if this series wins 7. Like I said, I think I had the Vegas in 6. So, but I wouldn't be surprised if this series wins 7.
I think I had Vegas in 7 in this series. So yeah, this could happen. So we'll see what happens there. Now the Battle of Florida. Tampa beat the Panthers, or the Panthers are still up 2-1. But yeah, the Lightning really needed that series. Nick Paul beat Bobrovsky. Bobrovsky didn't have his best showing there. So yeah, they came back. They outscored the Panthers, so they were able to get that win, and a much needed win, and they got a much needed game in that series.
Yeah, it was about time the Tampa Bay to bust down. They did there, as you mentioned. But Florida is the play here. I think I had them beating Tampa in 5, I believe. But I had Florida win the series regardless of how many games. But Florida still should be fine now. If Florida loses the next end, then we're going to have a problem. But Florida's the better team here. They should be able to win the series easily.
Well, speaking of going into this week's tonight, Tampa Bay and Florida, we'll see if Tampa can even the series. This will be at 6:00 on ESPN. Both these games are on ESPN, a doubleheader tonight. Colorado and Dallas in the pivotal Game 5 at 8:30 on ESPN.
All right, tomorrow, Tuesday, your schedule looks like this. At 6:00 on ESPN, Toronto will host Ottawa in Game 5 of this series. Toronto will lead that series 3-1. At 6:30 on TBS, Devils and Hurricanes Game 5 back at Raleigh, North Carolina. Carolina leads that series 3-1. At 8:30 on ESPN, Minnesota Wild and the Golden Knights live on Vegas. That's at 8:30 on ESPN. That Western Conference first round series is tied up at 2 games apiece. And at 9:00 on TBS and streaming on Max, it'll be Game 5 between the Oilers and the Kings in the Western Conference first round. That series is tied up at 2 games apiece.
And also on Wednesday, Montreal and Washington. This will be on ESPN at 6 o'clock. We'll see if the Capitals can wrap up that series. Game 5, we'll see. Could this be a clincher for Florida, or will it be a pivotal Game 5? We'll find out on Wednesday at 6:30 on ESPN2. And ESPN, they're actually going to be in Canada. Thank you very much. As they host was now a pivotal Game 5 against St. Louis at 8:30 on ESPN.
All right, your schedule for Thursday looks like this. Maple Leaf Senators Game 6 if necessary. The Stars and Avalanche Game 6, time to be announced at a later time, perhaps by tonight or perhaps by tomorrow morning. Golden Knights and Minnesota Wild back in the Twin Cities for Game 6. Time will be announced at a later date, perhaps tomorrow. And of course, we'll have Game 6 of the LA Kings Edmonton Oilers series. Time will be announced at a later date, perhaps tomorrow. So that is your schedule for the Stanley Cup playoffs for Thursday and for this coming week.
All right, listen to Second City Sports on Sports with LaKeena, McGee, Sidney Brown with you. We got a little bit of time before old school TV Monday. We'll get to that in a second here, but some sports media news first, and we'll start with our buddies at the Score. Probably one of the worst kept secrets. I think Sid and I both agree about that. But yeah, it's all official now. All involving friends of the show, Leila Rahimi and Marshall Harris will be now the new midday tandem of Rahimi and Harris, which they just started it earlier today, and they did this transition with Molly and David Hall, another friend of the show. Yeah, I think this was kind of like, from jump, especially once the bird scene, stuff started happening and started transpiring. And now, of course, Leila Rahimi will be the driver of the show. First time ever that a woman will do that for a sports radio station here in Chicago. So congrats to her. Also, Marshall Harris will continue on middays. He did a great job with Bird. See, I see no problem because look, he and we've had him multiple times on here as well. Both he, they worked together back in Philly over the old CHS and CSN Philly, and also too, of course, they worked in Texas as well. So yeah, they've known each other for a long time. So this should be a really good tandem. It should be this is a good move by the Score.
And also too, another good friend of the show, Mark Grody, who's the Bears beat reporter there for 670 Score. He will join them twice a week on this show. So we're going to have a 3-headed monster show at least twice a week until Bears season. I know he joined their show early today as a guest discussing the Bears draft. And so that's a great combination for the middays. I know there's no competition, at least locally here in Chicago. I know ESPN 1000 because of ESPN in Bristol. All ESPN stations must carry at least 2 to 4 hours of national programming a day. So ESPN Chicago here on the middays, you have Clinton and friends. And so the Score is competing against tape delay national programming. So they're going to sweep the ratings right there. And plus, going back to those two, they're just engaging, fun-loving people. And as you mentioned, we had them both on our show before, all three of them, I should say. So, they bring the energy, they bring the personality. They're going to make it middays fun again. So yours truly, both of us will be tuning in regularly or 670 Score. So I'm sure that I know some other people wanted Jason Goff back there. Unfortunately, that's not going to happen. I know some people may want other people to switch shifts to go have them go to afternoons or middays, but I think this was the best option that the Score and Mitch Rosen and company could come up with. And I think Grody, Harris, and Rahimi will do a great job.
Yeah, the only bad thing about this is that this will cut into our time with Grody. So, we got to see if this is going to be a problem. Because I think the schedule is going to be depending on how the season goes, and they can know that he was on the day with them during their 11 o'clock hours. So we'll see if I got to check with him, see if this is not coming on with us anymore, Mark. Yeah, so we'll just see what happens there. But yeah, I think this is a good move by the Score, and I think. Look, especially with the Cubs doing well, I think this will only help them. So, I think this is a good move by the Score.
Yeah, going back to television, LaKeena, when you mentioned about the hockey coverage a moment ago, the TBS lost their Capitals Canadiens feed yesterday, and for 30 minutes they switched to Rogers Sportsnet's coverage.
Yeah, the TSN coverage there in Canada. And look, like I said earlier, look, I get, look, we just said like a minute ago, I get why they did that. It's a cost-cutting move and such, but if, again, like I said, if Edmonton, Toronto, if any of those Canadian cities, you'll get to the Stanley Cup final and your guys can't go, yeah, no, yeah, this is, I don't know. It's just a little, it's just nutty.
You want Bissy, aka Paul Bissonnette, to lose his mind? Oh, that's not going to be a pretty day. So, speaking of not being pretty, LaKeena, I don't know if you caught this article last week, courtesy of our good friends at Awful Announcing. Mike Breen, who's the lead voice for the NBA on ESPN, of course, he's the guy for the New York Knicks on MSG. With that new television contract with the NBA kicking in next year with ESPN, not Turner anymore, Amazon Prime and Peacock. Remember, for you younger folks listening and watching, we're going to give you a history lesson, and this will tie into hockey too. Starting next year with those new TV deals in the NBA, you know that with those games in the first round going on at the same time, you know, especially with the extra commercial breaks, some of those games overlap, and we saw it again this year, and we saw it again this weekend. For many years, that the teams were able to carry those teams that were involved in the playoffs. At least back in the day, they used to carry the games locally. Remember, back in the day, they used to allow the old TV contracts allow those teams to carry those games at least during the week if your team reaches the conference finals. Over the last 15, 16 years, the teams that were in the playoffs, they were allowed to carry the games locally, the playoff games locally in the first round, and then the national TV carry it on exclusively from there on out. And hockey has done that too. But Mike Green says he's not happy with that because that's going to change all next year. All the playoff games for the NBA will be exclusively on ESPN, Peacock, and if Amazon gets involved, I think Amazon will have a conference final broadcast for the duration of the contract starting next year. So, but looks like the days are too consuming playoff games locally, LaKeena. We won't be able to watch them anymore, and at least of this live broadcast, LaKeena, the CHSN thing is going to be terrible whenever they get the issues resolved with expanding Comcast. But let's just say the Bulls make it to the playoffs next year, LaKeena. We won't be able to hear Adam and Stacey unless we hire them personally to come over to our houses.
Well, Stacey would do that too. He'd do that. So
you're going to pick one.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure he said he'll pay you if you come over to the house. But yeah, this is just sort of again, this is one of those things where like you're going on Amazon. Which look, I've got Amazon. I got Prime, so it won't be an issue for me. But it's sort of one of those things. You're just like, oh goody. It's bad enough I gotta watch.
Can I borrow your password?
Yeah, I'll look. Yeah, I'll share the password for anybody out there that wants it. But it's kind of like really. So yeah, I don't. It's just I know streaming, I know is the way of the future, blah 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 for sports. But if you really want to have people have more options, it's just sort of so. Especially you're going to do a conference final on Prime. Are you serious? So yeah, sorry, Adam Silver, but yeah, this is another bad move. But we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I don't like this rule either, LaKeena, because like I said, with those games overlapping.
Hi, Foster.
Let's just say if the Bulls were playing, and the game started at 7:30, but the game before overlaps it. I want to switch to CHSN. Or back in the day, Sports Channel / Fox Sports Next Chicago to catch the start of that game. But if you're outside of that market, you have to wait until that game is concluded for you to watch that other game. I don't like it. As I said before, remember, LaKeena, back in the day, especially when the Bulls were winning those championships, the league, they had the national broadcast on TNT, TBS, whatever. But you were allowed to watch those local games, those games locally on. Well, Channel 9 during the regular season, but you were able to watch those games on Sports Channel Chicago until the conference finals, and then after Memorial Day weekend, NBC took over, of course, in the 90s and 2000s, and CBS did the same thing in the 80s. So, yeah, those teams were allowed to broadcast local playoff games locally until at least back in the day, the conference finals. As I mentioned, they changed that over the last 15, 20 years or so. But now teams will not be allowed to carry their first round playoff games next year. I don't like that rule. I really don't.
Yeah, I want to see. I want to see how this goes once it starts next year. I think there are going to be people here that are not going to be very happy with this, especially like you said, if you get some of the big teams, from the bigger markets, the Knicks, the Bulls, and either one of the Los Angeles teams or Golden State. Yeah, you're gonna have some problems next year once all that new TV contracts. I know people are happy because we get the NBA back on NBC, blah blah blah. Okay, well then good luck trying to watch those games on Prime, folks.
Yeah, I think a lot of people will be tuning into their local radio broadcasts. I know for sure. I don't know what's the percentage yet, but going back to what the CHSN situation with Comcast here in Chicago, I know a few people that they cannot get the games regularly on CHSN because the antenna doesn't work, or they, like you, the hell with that antenna, and they have Xfinity like I do. Well, at least for me, being a season ticket holder, I can watch the games on replay later, courtesy of MLB.TV. But I can catch those out of market games. But if you can't watch them live, you can definitely tune into the radio. I know radio listenership is up for the Sox games a little bit, but even though the team's still doing poorly. But don't be surprised if those ratings for those radio broadcasts for the NBA will go up more around this time next year, but since you won't be able to watch the local broadcast because many people still want to hear and see the home team call. You won't be able to do that next year via the TV for the NBA. So let's say the Bulls make the playoffs next year. We won't get an administration, so you hire him privately, come to your house. You'll be able to get Chuck Swarsky and Bill Williamson from the score. And shout out to Alyssa Burger Media as well, part of the broadcast team. But, a whole lot more people will be tuning into the hometown call. I don't think that'll be a bad thing, but them for the teams not allow them to broadcast the playoff games locally, that's a bad move. Like you said, we know the money's in streaming, but it's a bad move.
It is a very bad. So we'll see what happens there when we cross that bridge. Now, some big ratings for the NFL draft. Now, the 4 through 7 ratings haven't been out yet, but the first round had some of the highest ratings. They were up, I think, like 8%, like 8 to 12%, depending on how you which network you saw that. But the second and the third rounds for day 2, the second most watched day 2 on record, 7.3 million viewers across ESPN2, NFL Network, and ABC. That's up more than 40% from last year. So big. This is for people who are going to say, why is the NFL draft such a big deal? Well, here's why, folks.
Yeah, they took a page out of the NBA's playbook, and they make the NFL draft into a show, like a red carpet show. You get all the 32 teams represented, even though we said from a football standpoint, it's not a very deep draft. You make it to an entertainment product, people will watch. And that's what's been happening with the NFL over the last few years. As you mentioned, with the first round coverage has been the highest rated in 5 years since COVID. So, the NFL is king right now. Whatever they touch, it almost turns to gold. So I'm not really surprised by what we heard and seen here.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, we'll see. Again, like I know Raj Goodell said that he wants to make it even quicker. So we'll see what he does and what he means by that. But so big ratings for the network. So again, well, I'm sure the ratings were actually pretty good as well for Saturday's coverage. So but yeah, I mean, look, good ratings all around. I guess if you're a big draft junkie. So congrats to everybody for the big ratings.
And them expanding a few years ago to a 3-day weekend event that has really helped them as well. Because remember back in the day, history lesson again, for those of you younger than us, remember, LaKeena, you had to wait all day for your team to pick in the first round? They started like at 10, 11 o'clock in the morning our time, and then go out to like 8 o'clock at night. Like I said, I wasn't in the house watching the draft all day, no. But I was like, where did the Bears pick? Oh, they didn't pick yet. Really? You had to wait until like 5 o'clock in the afternoon to find out who your team picked. Well, from that aspect of it, I'm glad that those days are gone.
Yeah, it is a little bit weird that they that they had all that back in the day. I remember Chris Berman said from that they really they didn't really have anything. They just had to do with their notes and stuff. They kind of had to go on from there. So that kind of started that whole show. And again, we'll probably talk about the NFL draft as kind of like old school TV Monday at some point. But it's going to be interesting to see like how much the NFL has expanded. But like I said, we'll see if Goodell has any plans on how they're going to make the draft even faster. But yeah, Pittsburgh, you're up next year. But yeah, I think Green Bay, I think like had like almost like over 200,000 people there in and around Lambeau for those 3 days. So yeah,
and they benefited from good weather too. So that was another big factor there.
Yeah, and of course, like I said, next year's draft will be in Pittsburgh.
All right. Speaking of old school TV Monday, LaKeena, let's wrap up today's show by having this our last edition of Old School TV Monday for the month of April. Real quick, LaKeena. On a random weeknight, or for me, begging my mother to watch her cable TV on the weekends, around Saturday afternoon, early Saturday night, flipping through channels like Sports Channel, Nickelodeon, MTV, flipped over to VH1, and one of the many programs you are watching, including yours truly, Pop-Up Video. That's right. Pop-Up Video was a VH1 television show that showed music videos annotated as pop-up bubbles, officially called info nuggets, containing trivia and witticisms relating to the video in question. The show was created by Woody Thompson and Tad Lowe and premiered on October 27, 1996. For a time, it was the highest-rated program on VH1, though Behind the Music overtook it in 1998. It was originally produced by the Spin Bottle Incorporation, later by iBoogie Incorporated during this original run. In October 2011, Pop-Up Video was revived by VH1, featuring new music videos with new trivia and commentary. The revived production was continued by iBoogie Incorporated. The show's pioneering use of pop-up bubbles to provide additional information about what is happening on screen has seen by many imitators and parodies, as well as some of the official licensed spin-offs, including Pop-Up Video UK.
Yeah, it was one of my favorite shows on there during that time, and I thought it was a really cool concept that they, kind of like, had little like nuggets and such about like the different, the song, they write the songs, what were the inspirations, and if they had to deal with real life animals. I remember the first episode of the torture video. I guess they tried to use a real snake with the Jacksons. They didn't want no part of that.
Yeah.
So they used claymation instead. That was actually when it was starting to become a big thing there. So that's kind of how that started. But yeah, it was cool, learn about all the nuggets, and interesting little tidbits about, how the video came to be and how the songs came to be and stuff. So yeah, I thought that was a really cool concept. I wish they still had that, but yeah, I think it was a really nice way to kind of like a little trivia for you and your friends as you're watching your favorite music videos.
Yeah, the 1996 VH1 Fashion Awards, Divas Live, which we'll do at some point. The Oprah Winfrey Show aired in syndication. Several episodes of The Brady Bunch that aired on Nick at Night in 2001, effectively named Pop-Up Brady. ABC's original TGIF lineup in 1998 and 1999 lineups and season premieres, and Who Wants to Be a Millionaire in December 2000 also used the pop-up treatment. So LaKeena, we talked about it before with the imitators doing it their way. We saw it on other shows. And with Pop-Up Video, I really like that, we got the information in nuggets from the artists, not just the artists, but the information about the songs itself. You saw artists that were featured on there regularly, like Madonna, Culture Club, U2, Prince, and Elton John. But just like we talked about with all those other music video shows that we did for Old School TV Monday, this Pop-Up Video really expanded their horizons, not just playing one style of music. They did hip hop, they did R&B, they did pop rock, and they did and they did other forms of music as well. They did some alternative rock here and there as well. So their music catalog really expanded throughout the years, and that's what I really appreciate about that show as well.
Yeah, because they weren't playing hip hop songs at one point over at VH1, especially in their early years. So that kind of helped, got more of, of course, like you said, R&B, and also like you said, they had cool duets. Like they had a duet with Babyface and Eric Clapton, Moby and Gwen Stefani, among others. And it was Nelson. It was one of those things where you're kind of like, it was great to see the videos, but it was great to see like the little tidbits about it. Like I said, I mean, the inspiration between the songs and the concept of the videos and who directed the videos and stuff. So yeah, those little interesting nuggets were really what kind of made it very cool. And it was definitely one of those. It was definitely a concept that was unheard of back then. Because no one really, because no one really kind of, had that. But Thunder Rose by Garth Brooks, and we saw what that song was.
Yeah.
Yeah. When that video came out, and again, hearing those things, I think really kind of give you appreciation of what these artists, what gives them their inspiration, and the songwriters too. There's a lot of cases when they wrote their own songs about that stuff.
Yeah. And you can catch various clips and some full episodes of VH1's pop-up video right here on YouTube. So for Old School TV Monday, wrapping up the month of April, we salute VH1's music program, Pop-Up Video. LaKeena, take us home.
Well, and also, too, since we're doing a little music theme here, congrats to Outkast, Cyndi Lauper, Soundgarden, late great Chubby Checker, and Salt and Pepper, among others, who were named to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame last night. They made an American Idol. And yeah, that was like really cool. And I thought Soundgarden and Cyndi Lauper were already in. So, I'm a little shocked that they weren't already in, but yeah, but it's good to see it. I hate that Chubby Checker, is no longer with us. I'm sure he would have loved it. I know he was lobbying for the last couple of years of his life. But yeah, seeing Outkast and Salt and Pepper and the White Stripes and Soundgarden.
Yeah. I know our guy D, aka Demont. I know our guy D, aka Demont Sproul. Happy birthday to his daughter Grace, by the way. She turned 13 over the weekend. But I know our guy Demont.
Oh dear.
Yeah, I know. I know. It's a very good thing, but how time flies. But I know Demont is a big Outkast fan, so I know he was jumping for joy when he heard that news. So. Yeah, so congratulations to all those acts that were now going to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. All right, take us home.
All right, now you can find my Keena McGee on the Twitter and just forget the IG.
You can follow yours truly, Sidney Brown, on the Twitter, X, and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, it's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. SIDKID80. Be sure to download the Sports Zone Chicago app wherever you get your apps. Please follow Sports Zone Chicago on all social media platforms. Please subscribe to our podcast at Ward Media Podcast. That's WARR Media, PODCASTS. We are on all podcast platforms, including the iHeartRadio app. And while you're ready to give Ward Media a follow at WARR Media on all social media platforms. And thank you very much in advance for your support.
Like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends.
Be sure to catch Second City Sports live in the living color every Monday, every Friday from 12:15 to 2:15 p.m. Central Standard Time, right here on Sports Zone Chicago. One more again, as the kids would say. Be sure to catch Second City Sports live in living color every Monday, every Friday from 12:15 to 2:15 p.m. Central Standard Time, right here on Sports Zone Chicago.
And of course, you can catch replays of all of our content on Sports Zone Chicago right here on the Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook and YouTube channels. You can catch replays of our show, Sean and Maya, What's Up, Cuz, the Smoke Fellas, all the other great content we have here on Sports Zone Chicago. You can catch the replays anytime, anywhere on Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook and YouTube channels.
And we will provide.
All right, enjoy the rest of the NBA and Stanley Cup playoffs. Also, baseball. I know the WNBA. I know their teams are starting. I know that the Sky and other teams, they started their practices yesterday. So, counting down to their season coming up as well. Also, shout out to Liverpool for winning the Premier League, their 20th, tie with Man U. So, congrats to those folks over there, over there across the pond, and so much more. Okay, so enjoy all the sports for this time of year. For Sid, I'm LaKeena, Second City Sports on Sports of Chicago. We'll see you guys on Friday.
Dub Bears, holla!